I now call on Anthony Pratt, Executive Chairman of Visy.
I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, their past, present and emerging elders and leaders. I congratulate the Prime Minister and Treasurer for their leadership in bringing together Australia's leaders to have a constructive and collaborative discussion about the opportunities of the nation in the coming decades. In addition, I'd like to commend Minister Husick's laser focus on the role that industry and innovation can play in increasing Australia's jobs and productivity. We affirm the government's focus on jobs and productivity. That's Visy's focus. Our business is about investing $10 billion to employ 7,000 Australians in well-paying green-collar manufacturing jobs and constantly improving productivity with latest equipment and training, plus we're investing an additional $2 billion over the next 10 years. We invest more than 100% of our earnings in new machines, but because 90+% of corporate earnings in Australia go to share buybacks and dividends, accelerated depreciation for policies for manufacturing investment in job-creating sovereign manufacturing is a tonic for well-paying manufacturing jobs. I congratulate the government for their leadership in manufacturing, establishing the National Reconstruction Fund to increase Australia's manufacturing self-sufficiency. Since COVID, what's happening in the Western world is that people are realising the wisdom of onshoring and restoring manufacturing because of the skills multiplier, because they're well-paying jobs and the greater need for sovereign self-sufficiency. We're proud that the average tenure of our workforce is 11 years, almost 2 times the national average. We focus on building worker loyalty and low turnover because that's how you build skills, experience and productivity. Often people talk about green manufacturing jobs as if it's coming in the future. We're honoured that for over 70 years in Australia, thanks to our workers and customers, we've been able to build a successful green manufacturing business, employing thousands of Australians, in our case, in recycling and remanufacturing. Recycling is an important weapon against climate change because as things decay in the landfill, they emit methane gas, which is 20 times worse for the environment than CO2 in causing the greenhouse effect. Because of that, landfills emit more CO2 than all of global aviation. In fact, a recent McKinsey report said that methane gas, which is what comes out of landfills, is responsible for a third of all carbon emissions on the planet. And because recycling is something everyone can relate to, every Australian can play their part in reducing methane emissions. The waste materials that are too adulterated to make into packaging, we convert to clean energy at our clean energy plants to power our mills. As a result, our business diverts 3 million tonnes of discarded paper, plastic and glass from landfill and remanufactures it back into packaging and clean energy. Regarding the industries of the future, Australia has a natural competitive advantage in food, which builds on our strengths of growing things and then adding value to them through manufacturing. For example, growing wheat, which sells for $100 a tonne, and then manufacturing that wheat into flour, which sells for $500 a tonne, and then manufacturing that flour into bread, which sells for $5,000 per tonne. This is value adding. Food manufacturing is already Australia's largest manufacturing sector and Australia's largest employer. Manufacturing jobs in areas where Australia has a natural advantage, like food, has a huge skills multiplier, and with global supply chain bottlenecks occurring, it makes us more self-sufficient. And we've been honoured to promote this at the Global Food Forum for 10 years because food doesn't get the attention it deserves. Finally, to support nation building and jobs and Australian business investment, we've been honoured to work with Paul Keating and the AFR since 2017 to promote super fund lending to Australian businesses, and since then super fund lending to business has grown 43% to $20 billion. And as Don Russell, Chairman of AusSuper, said, the sheer weight of money in super funds, which are going to be $7 trillion by 2030, will make super fund lending a good risk diversification for super funds. And I congratulate Treasurer Chalmers for his great nation building and jobs vision at our last week's Super Fund Lending Roundtable. Thank you, Prime Minister, Treasurer and Minister Husick.